This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode 56. It is a craft and it is a skill and it is a learned thing, because if it were just a push a button and signs come out kind of thing, it would be kind of boring. This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion.
Today's episode is sponsored by themakersguide.com. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Bill-Griggs, and I'm so glad that you tuned in today to listen to our show, which talks about your CNC router table, your business, your hobby, your obsession. I've spent a lot of time in the last few weeks going through the Facebook users group, the hashtag CNC Router Tips group, looking at new member applications for folks who are trying to become members of that community. Now, one of the things that I have been doing lately as this group has been growing, currently we're at just a little over 11,500 members, and I expect to be over 12,000 probably within the next week or so. And we've had a lot of new members coming on board. Well, one of the things that we're doing differently now than we were before, due to a change in the Facebook rules, we're able to ask new members who are applying to the group, we're able to ask them questions. And one of the questions that I have asked each of the members to complete before they come into the CNC Router Tips group is, what is your single biggest question about CNC router tables? What do you need help with? Be specific. And I've asked that question to all the new members who are applying, and a good portion of them have responded to that question. And I was reading through some of the hundreds of responses that I've been getting, and I've been noticing some trends in it. But as I was going down through these questions, I came across one that kind of reminded me of the situation I was in. One of the members, applicants, Rick Hoey, asked a question that reminded me of where my mind was at about the time I was trying to get into CNC router tables and trying to decide what I wanted to do. And Rick's question was more of a statement, actually. He says, "I'm thinking about buying a CNC router when I retire in about 3 months." And that kind of brought me back to the mindset I was in as I was getting ready to retire from my day job and take on the chance to finally get to do some of the things that I had wanted to do while I was working for years and years, but never had the time to do. And one of the things I wanted to do was to get further involved in CNC router tables. One of the things that Rick is talking about is getting a router table after he retires. And I think that he should probably consider, and Rick, I'm talking directly to you, I think you should probably consider getting your router table now while you're still working. And there's a variety of reasons why I think you should do that, and I think I will take the time to explain some of them to you, because there may be other people who are thinking about going down this road and getting a CNC router table to occupy some of their time in their retirement. And before I give you my reasons why I think you should get the table first, let's just discuss the mindset of somebody who's about to retire, because there's essentially two types of people who might want to buy a CNC router table when they're getting ready to retire. And one of them, the most common reason that somebody would do it is to start a hobby or to extend a hobby like woodworking that they are already doing or have always wanted to do. And those people have a different agenda than the other group, which we'll discuss in a minute. A hobbyist wants to do something for the pure enjoyment and relaxation that it provides. The pleasure of making something with your hands just simply can't be described. And, a lot of people don't consider, a CNC computer-controlled machine to be something that you make with your hands, but I beg to differ. There are so many steps and processes involved in running a router table that you just can't automate, or shouldn't anyway, in my opinion. It is a craft and it is a skill and it is a learned thing, because if it were just a push a button and signs come out kind of thing, it would be kind of boring. You have to have knowledge in several different forms of computer programs. You have to have an artistic flair. You have to have an eye for design. There are so many factors that go into being able to operate a CNC router table that I consider it a hand skill, a custom skill. So for the hobbyist, owning one of these tables, it's a no-brainer. It's like a table saw or a wood lathe or whatever. It's just one more tool in your workshop that allows you to make some really cool stuff. And if you're a hobbyist and you want to get a CNC router table, then, just go ahead and do it whenever is convenient for you. Now, the other people who would be looking to get into a CNC router table when they retire is those who have the idea or the desire to start a side business, a side hustle, if you will, using the CNC router table. And for those people, there are a variety of reasons why you would want to get your router table sooner rather than later. First off, for the person who wants to go into business, buying your CNC router table while you're gainfully employed is much smarter than waiting until you are retired and don't have the steady paychecks coming in that people will be looking at if you are trying to buy this on credit, for instance, or if you are taking some money from one of your savings accounts to buy it. It's a lot easier to do that while you're working and know that you have a dependable source of income coming in. When you retire, you will have less money coming in on a regular basis from the sources that you had before you retired. It's just a fact of life. You'll be living on less than you had before, unless you are, the 1 or 2% of the population who managed to save quite a bit of money and put it away in places that allow you to live a life of leisure. Most people just don't manage to do that. It's just a fact of life. So in my opinion, from that perspective, it's much simpler and easier if you buy it before you retire. Okay. But there are other reasons to consider buying it before you retire. Getting it installed and up and running and everything so that you're actually able to use it on day one, if you want, of your retirement. Because there's something really cool about that first day when you've retired from your job and you don't have a fixed schedule that you have to report someplace else to trade your time for money. You're able to do what you want when you want because you're retired and you have that availability. So being able to walk out into the workshop and fire up that machine from day one is really empowering. And I suggest that you seriously consider that. If you're thinking of, making it part of your project to build the table and build a workshop and all of that stuff as part of what you want to do for your first bit of retirement, well, then by all means, you can wait and get that stuff after you've retired and, make a project out of it, something to keep you busy and keep you focused. But my personal preference is that, get it while you can, while you're working. And as long as it's not a hardship on your family, get the best one you can afford. Start thinking about it down the road, because the worst thing that can happen is that you could buy a machine that meets your budget right now, but that you will outgrow in a year. I always recommend getting the machine that will fit the types of projects that you will be building and anticipate building. And if you have the room and the money to go big, go big. And many times when I've wished that I built a 4-foot by 8-foot or a 5 by 10 machine, because it would have allowed me to cut full sheets of plywood or do Baltic birch plywood for cabinets, without having to cut the material to a smaller size to fit on the table. But your experience may vary. Anyway, I hope that this short answer to your question, Rick, will help you in your thought process. I'm all for it. I think if you're thinking about getting a CNC router table, you should do that. And ask around. Some of the guys inside of the hashtag CNC Router Tips group will be more than happy to help you choose a machine, and tell you of their experience with the machines that they have. So welcome to the group, Rick. Thank you for your question, Rick, and best wishes with your new CNC router table.
Today's episode is sponsored by The Maker's Guide, creator of the Triple Edge Finder. Get the edge you need, save time and frustration on your CNC project, and make setup a snap. Save time and material. Set up your workpiece on your CNC router table faster than ever. Accurately set your Z-axis height first time, every time. Automatically locate the corner or edge of a workpiece. Reset your starting point in the middle of a program. Quality crafted right here in the USA on US-made CNC machines. Get the edge you need today. Go to www.themakersguide.com/edge. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Yeah, before I go, I'd like to just spend a little time and bring you up to date on some projects I've been working on. As you know, if you've been listening to the show for a while, I am the maker of the Triple Edge Finder, which is a product that allows you to find the X, Y, and Z positions of your work material on the table. And I have been working over the past year to improve the product and make it as good as I possibly can. And it's been an interesting time. I purchased that Tormach milling machine that I discussed briefly in the last episode, and have been using that to make these parts. And one of the things that was difficult in this situation, based on the tooling that I selected, I was making these plates one at a time. And I know that there are more productive, better ways to do that. And so I've been spending some time learning about fixturing and work holding so that I could come up with a better solution that would allow me to make several of these at the same time. I don't intend to make huge batches of these things, but it would be nice if I could, put one fixture on the machine and, pull off several of these in one go. It just saves time and effort, and meanwhile, I could do something else while the parts are being made, rather than standing in front of the machine swapping things in and out quite as frequently. And so to help me on this, I just invested in some new equipment for my machine. And one of the things that I just got is from pierson-workholing. And they make fixtures and hold-down pallet systems for CNC machines in smaller sizes and in larger sizes. People are using these Pierson-workholing pallets on, anything from a Haas to Tormax to Kitamuras, big machines and little ones, and they make a really nice product. About a year ago, they came out with the mini pallet system, which is their answer to work-holding solution for smaller milling machines, like the Tormax and Bridgeports and things like that. So this pallet system comes with a metal plate that you place onto a base, and this base, you clamps it down to your work table, and it uses airline to engage ball bearings on the center of this pallet system that lock your pallet in place. And it's really kind of neat because it's not constantly using air. The only time you use air is when you release the pallet, not when you're holding the pallet. So, it uses very little air to hold this pallet in place. And then, when you want to release it, you open up a valve and that lets the air in, and that compresses the ball bearings against the spring, and you can lift your pallet off. Well, I gotta say that this is one of the best made pieces of equipment that I have purchased in a long time. Recently, John Saunders from NYC CNC did a shop tour of pierson-workholing, and watched them as they went through the steps to make these pallet systems, and that video was kind of what spurred me to look further into this. And it's a really nice setup. I'm going to do an unboxing video to show folks what this thing looks like. I see no reason why this mini pallet system couldn't be used on a CNC router table just as easily as it could be used on a milling machine. The only difference is you would have to come up with new hold-down clamps, because the ones that are included probably wouldn't fit in your T-slot hardware, but that's not a big deal. The question comes in, though, would it be worthwhile on your router table? And it depends on whether you're going to be making small parts or need to change out fixtures frequently. But, I could see advantages of it. You would set your X, Y, and Z for, one pallet, and then when you replaced it with the next pallet, everything would be good. You just press your cycle start and off you go. So you could cut multiples of the same thing over and over again, and from a repeatable work position. Anyway, these things are not inexpensive. I mean, they're about $1,000. So it's not something to consider lightly. But if it is something that you thought you could use, you should check it out at pierson-workholing.com. And I'll let you know what my opinions are of it. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. If I think it works great, I will tell you. If I think I could have spent my money better elsewhere, then I will tell you that too. So, look forward to exploring how this is going to work out. But it looks like I should be able to get between 4 and 6 triple edge finders on one of these pallets at a time, and that would be miraculous to be able to do 6 pieces in a row for me. So stay tuned, and we'll let you know how that goes. I will put a link to their site in the show notes. If you want to check it out, I will also put a link to John Saunders' video from the tour that he did with Pierson-workholing. I think it's interesting, and if you're at all interested in CNC, how a CNC shop works, how the owner thinks about things, it's well worth watching. I think we will call this episode done. Thank you very much for listening into this episode of CNC Router Tips. If you like this podcast and would like to show your appreciation for the episode, you could really do me a big favor if you would leave a rating or a review in iTunes for the show. It's really pretty simple. If you're using an iPhone, just scroll down on the in the episode and you'll see where it says ratings and reviews, and just tap 5 stars or however many stars you think the episode deserves. Leave a brief message. Tell people what you think. It would really help out the show, and I'd be very grateful to hear back from you and to know what you're thinking. Thank you once again for tuning in. I often mention many different types of software during the episodes, and hardware and cutters, and it can get a little confusing. So what I did was I put together a page on my website, cncroutertips.com/resources. And on that page, I list all sorts of resources there, from books to tools to software, all the things that I use that make my CNC experience better and easier. And I hope you'll check it out. So again, it's cncroutertips.com/resources. Now, if you'd like to have your question featured on the air, here's how. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help, or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone, and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. I'm your host, Bill Griggs, and I really hope that you have a great day.